Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our CXPA-sponsored webinar by Intouch Insight. The topic today is how to select a CX platform for maximum impact. Again, thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. As a reminder, this webinar will be recorded and made available in the CX Toolbox within the Public Resources section of our cxpa.org website. This webinar is CEU eligible and will be recorded in your account within 1 week if you are a CXP. I would now like to introduce Alyssa Hansen with Intouch Insight, who will get us started today. Alyssa?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Alyssa Hansen. I'm the marketing manager at Intouch Insight, and we're the sponsor of today's webinar, which is all about selecting a CX platform for maximum impact. So for those of you who we didn't meet at the CXPA Insight Exchange last month, I'd just like to quickly introduce who we are. At Intouch, we think of ourselves as where experience meets innovation. We've been in the CX measurement space for over 40 years, which has given us a deep understanding of the industry and helped us build modern technology solutions that help CX professionals like yourselves measure and improve customer experience. So I'd just like to introduce our presenters. First up, we're going to be hearing from Jim Tincher, who is Mapper-in-Chief and Journey Map expert at Heart of the Customer. Jim is super active in customer experience and was actually one of the first certified customer experience professionals. Joining Jim is my peer and CX enthusiast, Erik Germain. Erik is a solutions consultant here at Intouch and also known as our resident product expert. So with that, we'll get started. I'll hand the floor over to you, Jim.
Thanks, Alyssa. And I'd like to begin, well, with a story. A little bit about something I went through 10 years ago at my first CX role. And those who were at the Insight Exchange last month in New Orleans heard a little bit about this story, but I want to go more in detail, because I think it really illustrates the challenge in front of us. Now, if we go back to that role, I joined a large organization where I came from Best Buy, and before that, small business. So I just naively believed that every company was customer obsessed. And I came in with that mindset, the one I hear a lot of my peers coming in with, where we just believe that what customers do, we need to listen to that, and that's what needs to be our focus. And when I came in, I found a couple of facts there. We were in the line of health savings accounts. And as I came in there, I learned that the organization felt that customers just loved this product. They really got into it, which amazed me because people seem more excited about health savings accounts than they did about TVs at Best Buy. And so I was really, well, how do you do that? And what I found actually is that that wasn't true. The employees were obsessed about health savings accounts and just assumed that customers were as well. In fact, a common phrase was, well, we're customers, so we know what customers want. Well, I got in there and started learning some uncomfortable facts. First of all is that even when a company would offer hundreds of dollars in free money to their employees, still 14% of the time, they weren't opening the account, which really hurt us from a revenue perspective, not counting what it did to our end customer. Also, whereas we led the nation in number of people with health savings accounts, we also led the nation on percentage of customers canceling those accounts. So I had the two world's best and easiest business cases out there. If we can make this a better customer experience, more people will sign up and fewer people will cancel. It's a no-brainer. And of course, I use that to drive change, right? Well, no. I played instead, the customers are good, let's listen to customers' scorecard. And I was completely failing to have impact. And really the highlight of that, or low light of that experience, was the day I was brought into the vice president of sales' office, and he shut the door behind me. And now this is going to sound like something a blogger would say, but he literally said these words to me. Okay. Stop bringing back the voice of the customer. He went on to say, you're too loud, you're making too much noise, You're disrupting our strategies. And then he repeated, stop bringing back the voice of the customer. The problem was not that the voice of the customer was wrong. I was thinking of it from just an island that we need to listen to customers instead of bringing it back to the business need. And that's a big part we want to talk about here is how do we link that to business need. Those who were at the Insight Exchange last month heard that was the theme of the conference, and it really needs to be something we need to focus on a lot. So let's go into some good news, first of all, about customer experience. The good news is that done right, great customer experience opens up amazing opportunities. You can really drive your business forward with a superior customer experience. When, for example, Accenture looked at this, they found that organizations that did customer experience right enjoyed higher than average revenue growth of 13%, as compared to minus 1% for those who were not doing it right. Similar results come from Forrester. They looked at customer experience leaders versus laggards. In their study, leaders grew by 17%, laggards by 3%. And then a third data point regarding just how much better you can do with a better customer experience comes from the Temkin Group. And they found that theirs, I know this is a little bit of an eye chart, but for a $1 billion firm, just have a baseline, if they're able to have a 10% increase in the customer experience scores, which they're calling a modest increase, then over 3 years, that $1 billion organization can see anywhere between $471 to $823 million of incremental sales through a combination of retaining customers, adding additional sales to them, word of mouth, new products, and forgiven mistakes. The average firm could see about a 20% annual growth, that's of $600 million over 3 years, through an improvement in customer experience. So lots of great data out there about the power of a great customer experience. But that's not a shock. We know that. Whether you've seen these specific pieces of data, I'm sure you've seen the impact of a great customer experience. That's still the good news. But the bad news is that too often, it's just not happening. Too often, we're not able to see those results. In fact, when Vail looked at a survey of over 1,000 companies, what they found was that 81% of companies said that their customer experience and improvement programs failed to deliver results. These are the good scenarios, the ones where the companies believe in customer experience, they've invested in customer experience, but 4 out of 5 don't see that initiative actually take root. We're going to talk today about how a platform can help you to become one of the 19% rather than the 81%. How it can help you to really drive customer experience successfully. And we're going to use a fairly simple model here, a 3-step model. It's simple, but it works. Number 1, listen. Listen to the voice of your customer. Number 2 is learn. But the gotcha is this is not about you learning. This is about your organization learning. And both of those are precursors to act. And by doing that, that's how you drive business value, which is how you get the impact, how you get a seat at the table, how you get the CEO's attention, how you get governance is through proving business value. Unfortunately, we're not so good at all three. We've really got the listen down, but with learn and act being less comfortable for us, there's much less business value coming out as a result. And Bruce Temkin, I love this quote from his, which really encapsulates here. It's saying about how it's all about the action. Action is a holy grail. All the efforts around surveying, integrating, data analyze that are only as valuable as the actions they lead to. And so we're going to put up a poll here. We want to start with, if you were to look at the Temkin Group breaks this into 4 levels of in voice of the customer. On the top are transformers. Those are the ones that are making a real difference. Collaborators, the second level down, they're working with their business. The analyzers are analyzing data, collectors are just collecting data, and the novices are just getting started. And so we've got this poll going. I'll give it another few seconds here for you to tell us, where do you find yourselves at right now? And so here's what we find. We find from this group, 5% put themselves as the transformers, 5% are collaborators, and 30% each are the analyzers, collectors, and the novices. We have 88 people on the webinar, so you can see a pretty broad distribution of the bottom 3 tiers, the beginning tiers, not so much at collaborating and transforming. Well, let's go back then and see what their broad study found across the market. And they found not far different. They found 30% each in novices, collectors, and analyzers. They found 9% novices versus our 30. 37 collectors, 40% analyzers, 13% collaborators, and only 1% transformers. Not so different from what we found in our group here. But it's in that bottom tier where you really start to see the impact. That's where we need to get to. That's where your platform can help you, is to move from being a novice or a collector or even an analyzer to start to have impact. So let's go back to our 3-part model of listen, learn, and act. And let's start with listen. So we're really good at this. We have all kinds of data. You've everything from call center data like average handle time, surveys, transactional, touch point, and relationship surveys, text and voice analytics, website tracking, and these are just a few of the many pieces of data that you have available to understand the voice of your customer. And so we really have this listen part down pretty well. That said, listening alone doesn't help customers. And judging by our own area here, where we're in the collecting and analyzing phase, that's where we most need to change. We need to be better about organizationally learning and acting what we hear. And that's where a platform helps you. A platform helps you to better collect the data, but more importantly, to help the organization learn and act. And that's what you need to be thinking about as you're looking at a platform. So if we have listening down, how are we doing on learning? Well, really, we find 2 key challenges in learning. And I want to reiterate, I'm going to overstate, but I don't really care if you learn. I know you learn. I know you can share all kinds of data about the customers. I know you have them figured out and can really recommend what to do. It's not about you. It's about the rest of the organization. And 2 challenges in the learning space are, first of all, data silos reinforce working silos, and data overload reinforces inertia. Let's look first at those data silos. We look at just 4 of the silos in your organization. You in customer experience, and your peers in operations, the field, and marketing. Now, there's lots of others out there, finance, perhaps sales, but we just look at these 4. And let's look at the data each really spends their time in. Of course, here in CX, we look at the Net Promoter Score perhaps, or customer effort, or customer satisfaction, whatever your metric is. We found here in Minneapolis, if we just put the word metric on the title of an event, people will come. I think we could get the most people to come if we created an effort called the metrics of cinnamon rolls. That place would be filled because we care about our metrics. We focus on a lot. And we also have our journey maps, of course, that help us there. That's where we spend our time. But let's move on over to the operations group. And their group, they're looking at things like operational expense, employee expense, field turnover, staffing rates. That's where operations is looking. We go out to the field, they care about revenue, close rate, renewal rate, turnover. Of course, these vary depending on what type of industry you are. But they're interested in field turnover as is operations, but the rest are unique. And we go to marketing, there's a whole new set in marketing. They're looking at things like new leads, website hits, campaign data, maybe loyalty club membership, depending on your industry. And these silos help prevent us from taking action. In fact, you really want to think about that. You can't align on the customer story if you're reading different books. And right now, we're all reading from different customer playbooks because our data is all siloed, so therefore, so is the work. Then even when we do get the data shared, it tends to look something like that. That data overload, your Excel documents, your little graphs that are hard to read and understand. Okay, so we've got an ugly journey map on the right. This is not a heart of the customer journey map. If it's ugly, it doesn't get read. And you can't act on data you don't read. So those are the two challenges with learning, again, organizational learning, is that you have your data silos, which keep the groups looking at separate data, and that even when they can't read it, that overload reinforces the inertia, keeps you taking action. And then the third part, so we're good at listening, we've got some challenges with learning, but the biggest problem is in acting. In fact, when we look at the CCXP exam, the Certified Customer Experience exam, the area that participants have the most problem with is business value. It's not a native tongue for a lot of us. Three real problems with driving the action is that, first of all, our siloed approaches create uncoordinated efforts. Contrasting incentives lead to inaction, and a lack of governance sinks many customer experience programs. Let's start with those siloed approaches. In the Avea survey, one transaction at a time, businesses failed to deliver on customer experience management programs. 43% of leaders think the top reason for that is project misalignment with customer preferences, indicating communication barriers within organizations themselves. Now again, they kicked off a project to try to improve the customer experience, but that inside-out thinking, 43% of the time the leaders say that's the problem, is that inside-out thinking means that we're not aligned, the outcome is not aligned with what the customers want. But it's not just the rest of the business. We look at silos, we need to look at ourselves too. Now, at Heart of the Customer, we partner with the CXPA to do a survey on the best practices of journey mapping. Now, we can talk about that separately. We can talk about how 2/3 of companies were not successful in journey maps. But there's one piece of data that really reflects our conversation here. It's not just the rest of the business driving silos. It's us too. When we asked people which departments were part of your journey mapping project, and we gave them these options as well as others: customer service and support, marketing, ops, sales and field representatives, IT, and HR. We know the most important item in journey mapping is having a broad cross-functional team. But how are we doing? Well, 2/3 of the time we're inviting customer service, but it drops off from there. Just 3 and 5 times include marketing, ops, just over half are sales and field, and poor IT and HR. In fact, we're leaving them out quite often. And every single journey map work we've done has a technology impact, as well as a cultural impact. And if you're not inviting these teams, then you're creating your own silos. Departments can't coordinate action when you don't even invite them to play. Or I should say we don't, because these are customer experience people that answered our survey, and we're not even involving them. Now, also, we talked earlier about the different data silos. There's also incentive silos. And by incentives, I don't just mean what we're getting paid for. An incentive is anything that drives you to act. We found at Best Buy, whatever was on the store scorecard, those metrics went up. So this does not just mean what you're paid for, but it's what you're incented in one way or another to accomplish. And for us, that's clearly survey scores. That's what drives a lot of our comp plans. That's what drives a lot of our incentives. We want to get those scores up. That's what we're tasked to do. But operations, that's not what they care about. They care about sales and expenses. The field often actually only cares about revenue. They may care about expenses, depends on what we're talking about, but often they're focused on revenue. And marketing, again, on another group, they're looking at leads and campaign results. So these different incentives makes it hard to act in a coordinated way. Here's the thing. Our scores impact all of that. Better customer experience, as reflected in our survey scores, lead to better sales, fewer expenses, more leads, more campaign results, but we're not linking them. We're playing different games. So it's no wonder we aren't winning. We all need to play that same game. And then the third part with acting is that there's a lack of governance. You see this article is about digital customer experience, but still applies to us. As CX pros look to differentiate their services with ever more demanding audiences, those who fail to steer their digital experiences with good governance suffer from increased costs, disjointed experiences, and anemic competitive stance. I remember talking with one member of the CXPA and said, you really need a governance program here. That's critical to drive you forward. And she told me, I just don't think we're ready for governance. Came back a year later, met with her again. What'd she say? You know, we're not driving any action. We're not making any change. Without governance, it's going to be really hard. So we're going to open up our second poll here and ask you, where is your biggest challenge? We selected 5 of them here. Is it proving the value of your program to leadership? Getting buy-in from other departments? Selecting the right technology and tools? Employee engagement? Or breaking down silos? Oh, we're seeing some very clear answers here. We'll give it a few more seconds, and we'll go ahead and publish it. We still have a lot of data coming in. We all know we don't want to publish our data until it's final. All right, well, let's go ahead and see what we had to say. So you can see proving the value of your CX program to leadership and getting buy-in from other departments are big. Breaking down silos is the biggest. And that's what we really want to work on. How do we break down silos, which is part of proving the value to your CX program to leadership, and then getting buy-in? How do we do that? We're going to spend the rest of my time here talking specifically about that. So we're going to talk about a 4-stage approach to go from listening to acting. Smash your data silos. Learn to speak business, show the scores visually, and build governance. Let's start with smashing those data silos. You need to get your data in one place. So long as your business partners have to go somewhere else to get the data, they're going to go there. If you can become the source of truth to get everything in your spot, then they're going to come to your site, and they can also look at the other data. You can start breaking down those silos. This quote here from Vivek: the problem lies in synthesizing all this information and drawing out a simple, clear, customer-centric plan of action. Information that is scattered needs to be put together in a way that gives structure to the characteristics of your customers. Then it's a matter of making it easy for your employees to understand. How does their action or inaction impact the customer's experience? You need to get all the data in one place as just a very beginning. But that's not enough. But it's necessary. Necessary but not sufficient. You get in one place. Then we need to learn how to speak business. Both you and the platform need to reflect what's known about the customer more holistically, to include those business KPIs. As long as you're only showing your customer data in terms of surveys and text analytics, it's going to be hard to get people there. But you need to make this platform so compelling that all the silos view your platform as a source of truth, and they can get their questions answered as well. If we look at this article from the Harvard Business Review, the most common reasons customer experience programs fail, most programs use their own tracking measures as emblems of success or failure. In other words, we use Net Promoter Score or customer satisfaction or customer effort. If the score improves, that number is heralded and CX teams use it as evidence of innovation and improvement by the team. And that's accepted at face value. But the problem with this approach is that you really can't control for all the other things that could cause scores to rise. And you can't assume that a rise in scores is good for net revenue. When it comes time to set key performance indicators or KPIs for the program, be sure to match them up against input for both your CMO and your CFO. I did a little bit of discovery work with a big restaurant chain. You would know them. They were really focused on sports fanatics. And they were celebrating because the scores were going up rapidly, just seeing incredible improvements to their scores. But at the same time, the business was failing. Revenue dropped quarter after quarter. They were creating experience focused only on their fans, driving everybody else away. So whereas the CX team said, yay, that's a win, the rest of the business was laying people off, including eventually the CX team. You have to partner with your marketing and your finance to make certain that the KPIs you're focused on are the right ones. And then show the scores visually. We said earlier, you don't act on data you don't read. So what can we do for that? How do we get that out there? Boring reports don't get read. Visual ones get shared. You need to move from, so looking at this quote from Brain Rules, I love this. The more visual the input becomes, the more likely it is to be recognized and recalled. It's called the pictorial superiority effect. I posted that to my blog at Heart of the Customer a few weeks ago, talking about why your journey maps need to be visual. It's even more true in your scores and in your platform. You need to move from that ugly look to a visual approach that people will read. Yes, from here they'll want to go down and drill down to more data numbers, but you need to start with visual reports that get them interested to go further. If you start with that ugly look, they're never going to read it. Start with the visual to get them interested. So we start with breaking down those data silos. Smash your data silos, get all the data in one place, so everybody's going to the same place, source of truth. You learn to speak business by bringing together, identifying KPIs, and also, by the way, showing how your employee scores, or your customer scores, I should say, actually matters for those employee metrics that they care about, like sales, repeat customers. Third, then, you need to learn. Third, you need to show the scores visually, and then lastly, you need to build governance. Now, governance may feel a little strange coming. We're talking about selecting a platform, but we find the right platform helps to build governance, and governance helps the platform to get more leverage. So it's a key part of that. This quote from Patrick Gibbons: ultimately, I think it must make business sense, which leans towards the logic side. If upper management sees that a CX project led to cost savings or revenue gains, it will garner some attention. This is more persuasive than observing industry trends, monitoring net promoter scores, or believing it is the right thing to do. Okay, don't be like Jim. Don't be like me. Doug's talking about how we need to listen to customers. Bring in the business value. That will lead to the governance. You have to show to them that this matters for what's important to your leaders. If we look at this article from the McKinsey Quarterly, the CEO's Guide to Customer Experience, to move from knowledge to action, companies need proper governance and leadership. I don't know if you've read this article. There's a good chance your CEO has. So if you haven't, I would strongly recommend getting that. And it's saying to the leadership that governance matters. But it's only going to matter if you're bringing in what matters to them as well, what's important to your leadership. And one last quote, coming from Customer Think, Bob Thompson, CEO. He did a study that found that just 23% of respondents claimed tangible benefits from CX investments. Okay, very similar to what we saw earlier. Companies are not seeing returns for their customer experience investments. Only 20% of companies scored a 9 to 10 for seeing a return on investment. 14% gave a 0 to 2. And the study found that only 30% of respondents said that key stakeholders were truly invested in the goals of the program. Because we're inside our own echo chamber. Again, we need to first bring together everything in one place. We need to smash those data silos. We need to learn how to speak business so that not only are we talking the language our internal customers are, we're also showing how their metrics are driven by our metrics. We need to show the scores visually to get people interested, to get them to want to learn so they're willing to go deeper into that. And we need to build governance so that we have a sustainable future for our program. Or, said in other words, data without action is worthless. So from here, I'm going to turn it back over, and we're going to talk a little bit more about a case study about how to drive action here.
Thanks, Jim. For those that I didn't get to have the pleasure of meeting in person at the CXPA Insight Exchange, I'm Erik with K. To build off of Jim's presentation, here are some key components that you should be looking for in a customer experience platform. Pretty impactful words on that screen. Data without action is worthless. I'll let that sink in for just a second. Ideally, a customer experience solution should help you drive action and value on information you are gathering. Similar to Jim's model, listen, learn, act, here at Intouch, we use listen, interpret, act, which was the inspiration for the name of our CX platform, well, LEA CX. To flesh out Jim's model in more detail, starting at the top right-hand side of the slide is listen. Many organizations are doing this today through a multitude of different platforms like online surveys, mystery shops, internal or external audits, even social media scraping. In essence, this is kind of the basics of CX and gathering your VOC, voice of the customer data. Moving along that loop, onto interpret or learn. This is about your organization's ability to absorb and interpret data from all sources. As Jim mentioned on multiple occasions, data is either siloed or you may just have too much data to make sense of it all. Being able to analyze your data and understand what actions need to be taken is essential to pinpoint what is working well and what needs to be improved. Last and most importantly is the ability to act. Being able to action that data that you've collected and interpreted will close the loop and allow you to align teams and leadership to see improvements across your VOC program. I'll say it again, data without action is worthless. So let's do something with all this data. So in order to succeed in customer experience, you need the right tools to listen to your customers, interpret that data, and act on the results to drive better experiences. So here's what to look for in a CX platform. Number one, a modern SaaS, otherwise a software as a service platform. So when you're looking at a CX platform, having a solution on the latest and greatest will ensure that you are on the forefront of CX technology. So why does that matter? It's pretty simple. Scalability. Having a solution grow without any issues as you grow is key. Having agile development. Everyone wants new features and functions, and being able to develop as such a solution requires a solid platform. And this all boils down to being able to integrate with the best predictive and text analytics and artificial intelligence and machine learning that's out there today. So back to Jim's point on visualization, boring reports don't get read, visual ones get shared. So what I have up here is a quick custom dashboard around the dining experience at a restaurant. And when I say custom, it's truly up to you, the end user, who has the ability to create your own dashboards with your data. In this instance, we're able to interpret the data from an online survey that was done. Here's an example of what you want to look for in a custom dashboard. As you can see, our overall score isn't great. However, the NPS is pretty good. I'm able to see what my top issues are on the right-hand side of my screen, and they're kind of related to food availability. We can quickly modify our survey to start tracking food availability and see its trend over time on the right-hand side, left-hand side. With the built-in sentiment analysis, we're able to extrapolate what the customers are saying, the good, the bad, and, well, the ugly. I'm able to see what's working well, great atmosphere, the service, and on the other hand, I'm able to see kind of where we're having issues, right? Again, with the lack of items, the food selection, it seems to be a reoccurring theme here. Another view you should look for in a CX platform is the ability to visualize your data within each of your customers' journey map. This allows you to see what improvements need to be done at each of your customers' touch points in order to ensure the best customer experience possible. The second feature on what to look for in a CX platform would be an omni-channel platform that can gather or collect all your information. So knowing that a lot of organizations today are listening and collecting data from multiple sources, having either one solution that can do it all for you is key, or better yet, even a solution, even if you're collecting data from multiple third parties, simply having the ability to integrate that data into one solution is equally important as well. If we're going back to visualizing your data, this lends itself to the importance of an omni-channel listening platform. Now you can show your data from all sources, like mystery shops being done, internal or external audits that are being collected, web-based surveys, or even if you want to bring point of sale system or data from your CRM, any information for that matter into the solution, you can. So that showing all pertinent data on one screen can really paint a story from each interaction that your customers are having with your brand. So a quote from the Bruce Temkin himself: only 24% of large firms think they are good at making change to the business based on VOC insights. Which brings us to our third point, a CX case management or action campaign solution. Jim mentioned earlier, action requires you to align teams and leadership. This is about getting everyone beating to the same drum with goals and KPIs that everyone can get behind, because we have all this data driving these metrics for a change. Here, we have a glimpse of KPIs being tracked in a customer experience action campaign. Wanting to improve the dining experience by increasing our food availability and by bringing in third-party point of sales data, we can track the average transaction size and all that great information. So in this example, actioning this data begins with upper management, launching the campaign to their employees. From there, we're involving frontline kitchen staff to complete their assigned inventory audits, and even location managers or supervisors to perform their daily checklists. This all boils down to accountability. Being able to see the task completion and that percentage there helps drive accountability across many different groups within an organization. Customer experience leaders can now attribute action campaigns to better business results. So in summary, the major components that you want to look for in a CX platform today are pretty simple. Number one, a modern SaaS platform. Really, it's 2018. Let's all get on the latest and greatest technology that's out there today. Number two, an omni-channel listening platform. So a solution that can either A, gather all of your VOC data, or one that can import the data from any source. And last, but certainly not least, a CX action-based platform. It'll help align your leadership and frontline staff to ensure KPIs are being achieved. So let's all remember that data without action is worthless. Thanks.
Thanks, Erik. Now, we know that a lot of you are still building a business case, so we've put together a document that's going to help you demonstrate the ROI of your CX program. You can grab it right from our website. It's intouchinsight.com/CX-KPIs-download. I will pop that into the chat window as well, so you can just click it. And now we're going to use up the rest of our time for some Q&A. So please ask your questions in the question box if you haven't already, and we'll just assign them as we roll through them. So first up, this looks like a question for Jim. We'd love to create governance but can't get the attention of our leadership. What are your tips to do that?
Great, thanks, Lisa. Really, that's the area about focusing on the business, learning how to speak business. What I've often seen is that leadership is tasked to have specific KPIs such as revenue, such as customer retention. And we've done a fairly poor job across a lot of CX at tying those two together by showing how improved customer experience outcomes results in improved customer retention, improved revenue, use of new products, improvement in forgiveness. if we go back and look at that ROI of customer experience from the Temkin Group, he identifies 5 different outcomes that come from improving your customer experience scores. Learning to speak business so that you can then tie what you're doing to what they care about is the quickest way to get their attention and to help build a governance program.
Great, thanks, Jim. Jim, what would you say is a surefire way to get employees to adopt a CX strategy?
Well, that comes back to similar in respect, but more targeted to what helps them. Depending on who those employees are, there isn't a one-size-fits-all, but bringing it back to how improving outcomes for customers will make their life easier. One example would be in a call center. We've seen data where by better starting with that customer side and taking the time to understand their problems actually can shorten a call, which is often one of the employee metrics, but also create a better customer outcome, which is a far more enjoyable call to have. And so it's that's similar to speaking business, but it's more targeted down to what matters for them. Really, both those questions come back centrally to really a psychology 101. Rather than starting with what's important to us, let's start what's important to the person you're trying to influence, whether that's leadership or an employee, and tying it right to what they care about. That's the way to start getting progress.
Great, thanks. This one just came in. Jen, how granular are people measuring NPS? Is it by touch point, by key interaction? For example, there could be many in a website or an ad.
There definitely could be, or by product. There's not a consistency across the board. One of the challenges we have as an industry is a desire to put an NPS on everything, which is a good goal on itself, except for the impact on customers. That's where we strongly recommend Heart of the Customer is that while you have your Net Promoter Score, you need to understand the impact of the relationship between whether Net Promoter Score, Customer Effort Score, and business KPIs. We worked, for example, with an insurance company where one of the key pieces of outcomes we found in our journey mapping work was turnaround time. Rather than adding a whole new survey around how do you feel about your waiting time, let's instead use as a measurement the waiting time instead, the turnaround time. And so what we're seeing in most companies that are driving action is to complement the high-level Net Promoter Score with business KPIs and showing the link between them. When you improve the turnaround time, NPS scores go up. Just remember in your analysis that if you improve the turnaround time tomorrow, scores probably won't go up tomorrow. There's probably a 30 to 90-day lag time, so include that in your analysis. But instead of going and having a number of different NPS scores, I recommend having a couple of them and tying in KPIs, business KPIs, that show their relationship.
Great, thanks. I've got a question for you, Erik. How many different versions of a dashboard might a typical company have?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess off the top of my head, really that's going to vary based on a company's needs and I guess the data that they want to analyze. I really believe that there probably isn't no right number, but the nice dashboards are specific to the user access, and so you can create one global dashboard, which in turn means that supervisors or district managers or regional managers will just see the information they need, or you can create as many dashboards as you want because there is no limit. So truly, I don't think there is a right or wrong number, just what's right for you.
Great, thanks. I've got another question for you, Jim. For a company who's just getting started with their CX program, where should they focus their efforts?
Well, the good news about that is it's where we're comfortable. It's with the voice of the customer. We need to begin that and then finding compelling ways to share it. So we go back to those 4 items. In some respects, it might start with number 3, which is to take the existing voice of the customer you have and make it compelling and interesting. Now, if you don't have a good voice of the customer, and clearly that's a place to start. But don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Get a solid understanding of the voice of the customer, and then get that out to the organization. So number 1, get the voice of data, a voice of the customer. Then number 2, start linking them back to that business so that they care. That will then give you air cover and hopefully funding to get better voice of the customer and improve from there.
All right, well, once again, thanks everyone. We appreciate you joining us and hope that you found this valuable.
Thank you guys so much. I want to thank Jim and Erik, plus the sponsor of today's webinar, Intouch Insight. And thank you again to everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the webinar. As a reminder, we have recorded this webinar, and the recording will be posted in the public resources area of our website. And if you are a CCXP, your CEU for attending this webinar will be added to your account within 1 week. So thanks again. We hope you have a great rest of your day.